One of hockey's most exciting rising stars is Matvei Michkov. The 19-year-old Russian prospect has been touted as an elite or even generational level talent for well over a year now, and with that comes a lot of attention. In part, that's for his incredible skill set, for his abilities that have put him near or over the hump of breaking various records for players of his age group. But that attention also comes as a result of lots of drama that has followed him and his career over recent seasons, adding to the intrigue surrounding Michkov. With his first full KHL season now completed, let's take a look at all that surrounds Matvei Michkov, from the KHL to the NHL, and through the on-ice and off-ice product. Michkov really showed off his skill set to the world in his draft year. Despite getting a good run of games in with SKA St. Petersburg the season prior, they couldn't find room for Michkov in 22-23, ultimately loaning him to HK Sochi. Sochi would prove to be the worst team in the KHL that season, but that was no fault of Michkov. He scored 20 points in 27 games with the team. This made him one of only 4 players on Sochi to score 20 or more points, and the only one to do it in less than 55 games. More interesting were his numbers compared to other draft-eligible KHL players of the past. His total games in the KHL were limited due to how SKA had handled him and some light injuries. Because of that, his point totals don't quite reach the very best 18-year-old KHL players. However, by points per game, Michkov outscored all of Vladimir Tarasenko, Kirill Kaprizov, Pavel Buchnevich, and Artemi Panarin in their seasons as 18-year-olds. Only 2 names sit above him all time, those being Ilya Tolvanen and Evgeny Kuznetsov. His immense talent put him on the radar of scouts as a candidate to go within the top 3 of the 2023 draft. The obvious concern was the Russian factor, the thought that maybe he would be unable or unwilling to make the jump from the KHL or Russia to the NHL and North America. Whether or not it was because of that, the first 3 teams in the draft elected to go with some other supremely talented forwards. The San Jose Sharks were the first team in the draft order to be suspected to have a chance of picking Michkov. They opted for Will Smith instead at number 4. Montreal was up next, and they decided to go with David Reinbacher over Michkov. While unknown at the time of the draft, a report later emerged alleging that Michkov and his camp had requested to both the Arizona Coyotes and Washington Capitals that they not draft him, which they may have decided otherwise to do with pick 6 or 8. That left a logical landing spot in between them at pick number 7, with the Philadelphia Flyers. They opted to select him, making Matvei Michkov the first selection of the new Danny Briere era of the Philadelphia Flyers. The draft was obviously a big moment for the player himself, but also for fans, to pick out any indications of Michkov's commitment towards coming to the NHL. Of course, no solid commitment of any kind could be made, given that Michkov is still under contract with SKA until 2026. However, he did really seem to concretely confirm his desire to come over eventually. From kissing the Flyers logo to talking about how they'd start winning when he came over, Flyers fans were pretty instantly sold on Michkov, and now look ahead to him as their superstar of the future. For now, though, he's still with SKA, and that's where he started his recent most season. Despite his excellent showing with Sochi the year prior, SKA still couldn't make room in their lineup for him. Michkov and star 2024 draft prospect Ivan Demidov were rotated in and out of the lineup as healthy scratches throughout the first couple weeks of the KHL season. Eventually, Michkov saw resolution and was loaned back to HK Sochi for another season. And despite battling an infection throughout large parts of the season, Michkov was able to put up another stellar season. With 19 goals and 22 assists, Michkov ranked only below line mate Artur Tianulin in HK Sochi scoring, and 17th in the KHL in points per game as a 19-year-old on, again, one of the KHL's weaker teams. In line with how he performed as an 18-year-old, Matvei Michkov's statistics as a 19-year-old really stand out. His 41 points were the second most all-time among 19-year-old KHL players, only one behind all-time leader Kirill Kaprizov. He outscored the likes of Kuznetsov, Buchnevich, and Panarin again. He also scored more and averaged more points per game than Nail Yakupov, who at the time of his 19-year-old season had just come off of being drafted first overall, and would score 31 points in 48 NHL games in the same year once the lockout ended. Safe to say that expectations are pretty high for Michkov. There's no question that he's exceptionally talented, and someone that should touch down in the NHL as an elite forward. The most important question remains whether he'll make it to the NHL. After hearing from Michkov at the draft, it does seem like he's going to come over eventually. It's not a guarantee, but it does seem likely. The most realistic possibility for when that will be is in 2026, after his contract with SKA ends. However, it is possible that he could be there as soon as next season. Michkov's teammate, Marat Kuznetsov, is a recent example of how this would work. Drafted by the Minnesota Wild, Kuznetsov was under KHL contract until 2024-25. However, as of a few weeks ago, HK Sochi and Kuznetsov mutually agreed to the early termination of his KHL deal. Kuznetsov has now signed for Minnesota and has begun his NHL career. The Flyers themselves have also had some luck with this in the past week or so. They've been engaged in the process of bringing over goalies Ilya Fedotov and Alexei Kolosov from the KHL. With recent history on their side, it shows there's no reason that Michkov wouldn't be able to do the same, if SKA and his camp could come to a deal. This is not the most likely possibility for Michkov, but it is a possibility. Whether it's in Russia or North America, Matvei Michkov's development will continue to be one of the most interesting stories among NHL prospects. The Flyers are waiting on him to be the key piece to kickstart their contention window, something they've already begun to prepare for. Once he's there, the hope and expectation is that he'll be their next superstar. All signs seem to point to him becoming that, and we'll see what the next steps for Michkov are over the course of his off-season.